Welcome to this month's edition of the Watch Club. We're the monthly filmmaker interview series of the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. I'm Program Director James Sullivan. We're brought to you, as always, by the Ford Hall Forum, which is the longest continually operating public lecture series in the country. We thank them as always, and we thank you for watching and for your donations. Don't forget to subscribe and like our YouTube channel so you can get updates on our monthly interview series. And we're here today with Connie Field, who is the director of Democracy Noir, which we just screened to a very appreciative audience at this year's Newburyport Doc Fest, our 21st. This is a fantastic film about Viktor Orbán's quote-unquote illiberal democracy in Hungary and what it might say to American politics today. For those of you who haven't had a chance to watch the film yet, I'm just going to take a quick look, as we usually do, to the trailer. And then when the trailer finishes rolling, we will be back with director Connie Field.
I think I have identified the real big threat for humanity. It's unhinged, uncontrolled men. Viktor Orbán, he's unchecked by the media. He's unchecked by the justice system, which he controls. He's unchecked by his party, who would never vote him out of power. He's unchecked by the opposition, who he threatens, and he's unchecked by the Hungarian people, who he lies to.
The list is long, what you have done. Chasing away critical media, building walls, and now you have decided to close down a university. What is the next thing? Burning books or so?
Amit Orbán Viktor itthon alkalmazott, ezt meghekkelték a demokráciát gyakorlatilag. És hogy én egy kicsit attól félek, hogy ezt így sokan fel fogják fedezni, hogy ezt meg lehet csinálni. Itt van a módszer, hogy hogyan lehet megcsinálni.
We should unite our forces, because we Hungarians know how to defeat the enemies of freedom on the political battlefield.
There has to be an enemy.
Erőszak, bűnözés, nem engedhetjük be őket Európába.
So he creates an enemy and he protects his camp against that non-existing enemy.
Magyarország lesz az első olyan ország Európában, ahol az iskola falainál megállítjuk az erőszakos LMBTQ propagandát.
És azt hiszem, hogy az volt az első pont az életemben, amikor elgondolkodtam azon, hogy lehet, hogy akkor el kéne hagyni ezt az országot. A kormány ennyire nyíltan gyűlöl, akkor mit csinálok itt?
Most már tudatosan megyek ki az összes demonstrációra. Maximum az, hogy külföld látni fogja, hogy Magyarországon a magyar emberek tüntetnek a kormányuk ellen.
It would be so easy to give up, but we're just not put together like that. Fighting for freedom is in our blood somehow.
Welcome to the Watch Club, Connie Field.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. So I want to just say a couple words about your career before I ask you some questions. We actually already have an audience question too, so I'll get that in a second. Get to that. So Connie, you have an extensive history in the documentary field. Your films have been mostly about activism of some sort or another, right? Your first was about Rosie the Riveter, right? You have done films about the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And the civil rights movement, right? The voter registration drive during the civil rights movement. And I didn't know this until today, but you're based in Berkeley, but you kind of got your start in activism in the Boston area, right?
I did. I lived for a long time in Cambridge and Boston, and was very active in a lot of things that were going on in the late 60s and early 70s, which were wonderful, actually.
And as you told me, you were primarily involved in the anti-Vietnam movement, right? But
well, no, the anti-Vietnam movement, building the women's movement. We had a wonderful
right.
organization called Bread and Roses
Yes.
that was very influential.
Yep.
We worked on a lot of different things.
So that was my next question for you. I was wondering, I mean, early 70s, I know Boston was a huge part of the, there were multiple groups, including Bread and Roses, right? Combahee, is that how you pronounce their name? Combahee? It's like an Indian, Native American word. Anyway, a lot of great organizations in the Boston area who were involved in sort of that wave of feminism and the women's rights movement in the early 1970s. So I'm not surprised to hear that you were part of that as well.
Yeah. Very important time in history.
Yeah. Well, right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and ask our viewer Linda's question because it seems apt. So Democracy Noir is available on Vimeo, as we pointed out to our subscribers. But how can those in the Boston and Cambridge area help you get this excellent film distributed here? What, if anything, can viewers do to try to make sure that you get theatrical screenings here, which I know you're doing in some other places around the country,
Yeah,
right?
we've tried. We screened all over the country. We just haven't been able to do that in Boston yet.
Yep.
Yeah, if they can call up the Coolidge Corner and ask them to play the film or the Brattle Theater and tell them they're looking for this film and it's been other places, that would be great. They could write about it on their Facebook pages, which would be really, really wonderful. They could join our Facebook page for the film. At Democracy Noir, and all of that would be extremely, extremely helpful.
Yeah. So thanks, Linda, for asking the question. That lets me say what I always say, which is if anybody else who's watching live wants to ask Connie a question, all you got to do is type it into the chat, as Linda did. So let's talk about the making of. Actually, I'm going to start with this because I just heard this on the radio today, Connie, and it seemed like a good, sort of entree into the discussion of your film. Those of us who follow the news closely on a daily basis and get inundated with all the crazy news that's been happening lately, know that last week when Trump met with Zelensky from the Ukraine, he claimed that he was going to meet with Putin again soon. And I just heard, and that now they're saying, nope, that's not happening. But the point I wanted to make is that apparently Trump said, we're doing that in Budapest.
Yeah.
So does that make perfect sense to you that if Trump and Putin were going to meet, that it would be on Orbán's turf in Budapest?
Well, absolutely. Because first of all, he's the only European nation that's in the EU who will protect Putin so he doesn't get arrested.
Right.
Because there's a warrant out for Putin from the International Criminal Court.
That's why the last meeting had to happen in Alaska, because Trump wasn't going to arrest him either, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also that was the same from Netanyahu. Netanyahu came to Hungary and Orbán did nothing. Orbán basically, in essence, sort of supports what goes on in Russia because it's basically what he's doing in Hungary and what Trump is trying to do in the United States. The only, difference is that he's not as violent and he doesn't throw all his opposition people in jail, whatever, because he doesn't really need to do that. Putin does need to do that, which is why he's done that in Russia. But Orbán has basically maintained so much control and can change the voting rules at a whim. That he's always been able to maintain his power, quote unquote, through elections.
And I'm not sure that every American knows this, but, Orbán is, claims that it's a democracy that he's running. So does Putin, right? I mean, Putin will say, do they call it something similar, like democratic socialism in Russia?
No,
just democracy?
No,
he just calls it a democracy.
Just democracy. Right? They don't call it democratic socialism.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of folks probably still think that, Russia's communist or something, right? But they're clearly...
democratic socialism exists in Europe.
Right.
That's really what all the European countries do. They have a democratic socialist system. They have a great system of support for people through healthcare and all kinds of things. Yeah.
All the things that, Americans say, well, that sounds great. But then when you put the name socialism on it, they go, oh, no, we don't want that.
Right. Yeah. Except Bernie Sanders.
Well, exactly. And AOC. And that's about it.
And Mamdani.
And Mamdani. That's right. Yeah,
Hopefully
exactly.
our next mayor of New York City.
Right. Are you, so tell me if you can, the story behind your connection to Hungary. I know it's personal for you and you've been working on this film for a long time, but tell the viewers how you came to this story.
Well, the reason I did this story is because my husband is Hungarian. He was born in Budapest. And we've been going there almost every year since 1990. So we've kind of had a front row seat watching everything develop for quite a long time. And we have a wide community of friends. I actually started filming in 2014. Because I was in Liberty Square, which is a main square in Budapest, and there were 4 empty columns surrounded by police and surrounded by all these demonstrators. So I went to find out what in the world was going on.
Right.
And what this was about is that Orbán was rewriting history. It's really like what Trump and the Republicans are trying to do in our country now by banning books, by taking over schools. Orbán did eventually all of that. And this statue was one of the first symbolic things about that, because it was a statue about how Hungary suffered under Germany during World War II, as opposed to being their ally, which is what they were.
Right.
So people were trying to stop this from going up. They actually stopped it for six months. It was just amazing. And they put a counter, sort of display in front of this statue saying what really happened, how many Hungarian Jews were hauled away, the head of Hungary riding in a car with Hitler, all the things that were the truth that made the statue behind it a lie. And to this day, that sort of counter bit of information that's in front of the statue still exists.
Wow.
They keep it up to this day. So I started filming. I did a lot of filming then, but I couldn't get it funded.
Yeah.
I mean, Hungary was not on anybody's radar
At the time, right.
at time. And so basically, and I would film on and off when I went back, a lot of times, and especially with Nico, because I met Nico, who's in the film. She's the nurse, whose mother is an Orbán supporter.
Right.
And she was at the demonstration in 2014 where I met her, and we became Facebook friends.
Right.
So I just, followed her throughout, all these years. And, then began filming in earnest really in 2021 when I was in discussion with the woman from Denmark, Sigrid Dijker, who became my producer. And really it was the partnership with Sigrid that made the film possible.
Right. And then you found your other 2 protagonists, right? The politician and the journalist, right?
Yes. Yes.
And the politician was obvious because she was campaigning and she was on the streets and doing that, right? And you, or no, go ahead.
Well, no, I basically found her on the internet where I watched her with my husband. She's very feisty. And she says everything straight like it is. And I thought she would really be great. So I met her first by watching her.
Right.
And Babette I brought on right before I went to film during the election of 2022, because I realized I must have a journalist as part of the story. There just wasn't a good way to do it without that. And I interviewed journalists on Zoom and picked Babette. And Babette was like really a partner for me on the film in many, many ways, which was wonderful.
Right. Well, I'm a journalist. That's why we love documentary film, because it's another form of journalism, right?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about, you started to say this earlier in this broadcast, but you also said it to us at our film festival a couple of weeks ago. I said something about which everybody I'm sure is asking you, how do you compare the guy in Hungary to, our president right now? And you said Trump is way worse. You started to explain that earlier tonight, but can you dig a little deeper into that, your conviction about that? Like, go ahead. I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
Okay. First of all, Trump as a personality is very dangerous in and of itself. And he's very, very vengeful, okay, to an uncanny degree, as we're seeing, okay?
Yep.
That's not who Orbán is.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump really believes is very violent in his approach to wanting to get his way, like get all the immigrants out of the country. And in Hungary, it's different because, as I said, Orbán is pretty secure in maintaining his power through quote unquote democratic forces.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to jail his opponents. He's not revengeful the way that Trump is, though this will be the first time that Orbán has really been challenged, okay, in this iteration of his regime, which ran from 2010 till now, because there's a new party in Hungary called TISA, and it's out polling Orbán's party. So this is going to be a very interesting year in Hungary, just as it's going to be a very interesting year for us in the United States, the 2026 elections.
And is the presidential election there? That's it. The next one is in 2026.
Yeah.
And just because the opposition party is out polling him, doesn't that still mean that he's just going to find a way to fix the numbers in his favor anyway? Or is it?
Yes, of course he'll try to do
Right.
that. I mean, I can't quite imagine how the opposition, which is huge, is going to be able to outmaneuver that. But what's very interesting sort of about what he's doing is that he banned Pride. They always had a Pride parade in Budapest, and he banned it. It was against the law. But in Budapest, there were over almost 200,000 people in the Pride parade this last spring.
Oh.
And Orbán, led by the mayor of Budapest, who you will see in my film get elected. Yeah. And Orbán did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There was really nothing he could do. So
had they never had a Pride event that big since he took power in Budapest?
No. It was much bigger. It was much bigger. And the reason it was much bigger is like Nico used to not go out for the Pride parades. It's not that she's but she usually, this time she did. So you really had a lot of people who were out in the streets who normally wouldn't be, because the Pride Parade is really a celebration and it's fun and it's not really hard politics, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I mean, it's a statement of the pride of existence. Yeah. So this time it was a really, really big political statement.
Right.
So did you go to No Kings? They had so many people.
Did you go to No Kings in Berkeley this past weekend?
Of course, I went to Oakland.
How was it?
It was great. It was really great. There were a lot of young people. It was spirited. There were people in, all these animal costumes and everything else. It was great. I think everybody all over the country did a great, perfect job that day. And Portland, bless their hearts, for coming up with the frog costumes. It was just brilliant. Really
but
brilliant.
So how does that correlate in any way to what you just said about, this might spell, a turn against Orbán with the Pride Parade, the success of the Pride event last year in Budapest? Do you think that No Kings, it correlates at all here?
No, not in that way. I mean, the TISA party, which was a small party that was started in the countryside in 2020. And the guy who was head of it used to be in Orbán's party.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Okay. And he's running that. And he's now got a lot of good people around him. They needed something completely new because the opposition was basically bankrupt. Okay. In the same way, our Democratic Party, if it doesn't change, is going to face the same thing. Okay. So hopefully it'll listen and do something. But
who's going to do that here? Who's going to do that here? Start that little part, a third party, opposition party that.
No, we don't want it. We do not want a third party. Absolutely not in America. It's just
okay. I'm just asking if you
until we have ranked voting, we cannot do that here. We're basically two parties. And the advantage we have about that is like the Democratic Party has as much money as the Republicans do.
Right.
So they're quite equal. No, this is not the time to do that. This is time to really push the Democratic Party. And there are people that are doing that. If Mandani wins New York, which I have confidence it's going to happen, that means a sea change for the Democratic Party.
Right.
And plus David Hogue, who was one of the kids in
Parkland,
the Parkland shooting, who's now very involved in the Democratic Party, and he's working to get younger people basically to take out our octogenarian generation of Democrats who should retire and let the young people, come in. And so there's a lot of good things that are happening.
So Orbán uses this term illiberal democracy, and I'm hoping you can explain that for us because, excuse me, although we know that there are, certain people to the right of the political spectrum, both there and here, who love nothing more than, sort of, what's the phrase about the libs? Why am I blanking on that? Owning the libs. However, illiberal just sounds like it's a word that, it's like socialism. It's like, for a lot of people, socialism is just a dirty word. Illiberal sounds like a bad phrase to use for your party, no matter what part of this, political spectrum you're on. Go ahead, please explain.
Not if you're Viktor Orbán, who is trying to create basically a new paradigm, a new, sort of political philosophy.
Yeah.
He's much more of a, he's basically quite an intellectual. Viktor Orbán is. Viktor Orbán went to Oxford when he was a liberal, way back when, on a scholarship by George Soros.
Wow.
Who he tries to now make into the big boogie devil.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, or Soros paid for his education.
Wow.
So anyway, so he's trying to define a new way and a new social ideology. And that was one of his steps in defining it. That instead of liberals, we're illiberal. We're not like the liberals. We do not believe in homosexuality.
Right.
We are more traditionalists. We are Christian nationalists. We are all of that. So it's part of his trying to influence ideologically the world, which unfortunately he has. I mean, he has this institute called the Danube Institute. It's very close to the Heritage Foundation.
Right.
People go back and forth.
Yeah.
The Danube Institute and Orbán was very influential in the creation of Project 2025.
Yep. Yeah.
So these have been going back and forth across the ocean for actually quite a while.
So interesting that you said that he himself had a liberal background or upbringing, academic upbringing. I mean, Trump was a Democrat when he was younger. I mean, like they're both the connection there is that they're both political opportunists, right? Like once they see, oh well, if I go that way, then I get I can accumulate all the power. They just give up whatever ideals they maybe had when they were younger and say, forget it. I'm doing that because I want that's all they want is the power, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. Orbán did the same thing as Trump. I mean, Orbán, he was in power from 98 to 2002 and he lost.
Yeah.
And he was very depressed. And then he went all over the country and started building these civic organizations with his party, Fidesz, and listening and coming up basically with a construct that would work for all these very, sort of conservative, population of the countryside.
Right.
And that's what he did. And we know Trump did the same thing.
Right.
We know Trump believes in abortion. I mean, we know that he's not a Christian. I mean, he fashioned a politic to make these people, the megas, be his base. Right. Same thing.
Fidesz, the name of Orbán's party. What does that mean in Hungarian? Is it like loyalty or loyal or something like that?
I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember.
I mean, I definitely don't know. So we're fine. It's intriguing, all these comparisons. I mean, you're so right about the vindictiveness of the guy here, but in your film, you see Orbán being confronted, in the, parliament, in the legislative bodies or on the streets or whatever. And he just has this very calm smirk on his face all the time. Like he just kind of knows, like, what are you going to do to me? Right. I mean,
Yeah, so he allows that to happen. I
right.
mean, it's basically people have been fined for demonstrating, but rarely arrested.
Yeah.
There has been some murky stuff about some reported killings in certain areas, but it's very little. Mostly, it's basically sort of gangs and brutes who come
Yeah.
in who
Yeah.
are right wing in Hungary and beat up demonstrators, but they're a very, very small group.
Yeah.
So Orban's always let that happen.
Right.
But
Wow.
also the other thing, which is interesting, I don't think, and I could be totally wrong, we're going to see what happens this spring. I don't think Orban wants to be a brutal dictator. I don't think that's his vision for himself.
Until he loses the power that he's accumulated.
Well,
Then
I'm
we'll
not.
see, right?
We'll see. We'll see.
Right.
I'm not even sure that would be worth it for him
Mm.
because he wants a legacy.
Hmm.
You see, if he turns into a brutal dictator who mows people down in the street, he's going to have a very bad legacy.
Right. Right.
So it's a real question.
Right. All right, we're going to leave it there. I could continue to talk to you for hours, but maybe we'll get a chance to do that again sometime soon. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us again. And best of luck with your film. We'll see if we can get some folks to, hit up the local theaters to pick up a theatrical run for the film in the Boston area.
Great. I just want to add one thing.
Sure.
That the film is really about resistance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's seeing these three women tell us the story
Yes.
of what's happened over the last 12 years from their perspective
Right.
and their vantage points. And
Right.
that's what the story is about. It's really about these three women.
And so if you haven't seen it yet, but you're watching this interview, understand that it's not quite as depressing as I probably made it out to seem, because it is about hope. It's about their hopefulness for that what they're doing will matter eventually,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for thanks for pointing that out, Connie.
Okay. Thank you
gonna-
for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Hang on for just a quick second. I'm just going to say thanks to our sponsors once again, the Ford Hall Forum. As always, we love having them partner with us, and we'll see you next month in the Watch Club.